Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit, find out how. Go to PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. All these NFL wide receivers. I mean, this is a story in itself. Adam Caplan from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast is set to join me. I'm looking over my shoulder and I see them talking about Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, Terry McLaurin. They're all skipping the offseason workouts. They all want contract extensions. The wide receiver market has just got completely blown out of control, and I don't know how you reel this thing back in. We'll get into some NFL, Eagles stuff. A lot happening out there. Very interesting name met with the Eagles, by the way. Let's bring Adam Caplan in from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast as he joins us for another edition of Football at 4. Adam, welcome back, man.
Yeah, Mike, good to be with you. Yeah, like with the receivers, like Deontay Johnson, I don't expect him to show up. He was the third rounder in that. He's in the final year of his rookie deal, though. The Steelers, they typically, not always, they extended Ben Roethlisberger's contract before it expired, but they typically like to wait till the rookie who's been drafted finishes his rookie deal, then they extend. So, yeah, look, the teams, Washington, as I understand it, was told weeks ago, and that still holds true. They wanted to wait a little bit closer to training camp, but they're open to extending it, though. They definitely want to do it. He's one of theirs. They got that one right. Though he was drafted by a different personnel staff. Ron Rivera, the head coach of Washington, has personnel control, but he's indicated they want to get something done. The Kyler Murray situation is interesting with the Cardinals. They definitely were not considering or wanting to do anything anywhere close to now. They wanted to wait a while because they've got control of him for at least 3 more years. Now, and as you mentioned, some of these receivers are not going to show up, according to that ESPN report. That none of that is surprising. But it really becomes real, Mike, when we get to training camp, because that's when they could be fined. So receiver not getting a contract now doesn't really mean anything. It's not going to make the team do anything. They don't have to because they're really not missing anything. It's when we get to training camp, that's when it's a major story, because if these players hold out, the clubs have leverage and they could do what they want.
Now, like Christian Kirk, did he blow the market out of the water to where people were like, what that guy got, look what I'm getting? I mean, some of these guys, McLaurin, were drafted in the second round, Deebo Samuel, second round. So they don't have that big contract. I get that aspect of it. Look, I've outperformed my contract, but at some point, don't you have some inner self-confidence to say, hey, look, I outperformed my contract. I know, and if it's not San Francisco, someone's going to pay me mega money.
Yeah, now, with Deebo Samuel, I understand that Kyle Shanahan, the head coach, has personnel control. And Kyle, like his father Mike, when he had personnel control over the years, has a willingness to walk away from players. He just has shown that. And I know that talking to people who know Kyle very well, as much as he's developed Deebo Samuel, it's crazy it would be for them to trade him. I would not rule that out. I think it's a long shot, just like it's been a very big long shot that the Seahawks would trade DK Metcalf, though he clearly wants to be there. Despite the trade of Russell Wilson, he's made it clear he wants to be a Seahawk. But let's say for real that Deebo Samuel has to be traded. He hasn't, by the way, to be clear. He hasn't. But what if he did by the start of training camp if he doesn't have a new deal? Don't be shocked if something happens there.
Right. I mean, you take a look at, and Deebo, A.J. Brown's another one. They're all eligible for extensions. They're in the final year of these rookie deals. I get it. Like, you want to feel like your employer's going to come to you and say, hey, you've done a great job. Here's a raise. But I just don't understand the mindset sometimes of like, all right, look, they didn't come to me. Shame on them. If they want to let me go, I'll go get money from somebody else. I get it. That's probably not the mindset of these guys. They look at themselves as business entities. But at the same time, it feels like this is becoming a trend. It's almost like teams are looking at wideouts like they do running backs. Yeah, we'll just draft you, we'll use you, then move on, we'll find somebody else.
Well, there's a little bit of that, but what I would tell you, though, with the Titans, I know they absolutely do not want to trade A.J. Brown. Of all the teams that have guys who are eligible for extension, the way it works is if you were drafted rounds 1 through 7, you cannot have your contract extended until after the third year by the rules of the CBA.
Right.
By the way, that's the Joe Banner rule. Banner, when he was with the Eagles, would want to get guys that they signed early. And he would, back then, it was after 2 years, and remember, they would later change it in the 11 CBA. If not before that, it got changed to 3 years. I remember Michael Lewis, the safety, he wound up signing a big contract with the Niners. He actually spurned the Eagles and decided not to sign an extension and went to the Niners and didn't play much longer after that. But that's kind of the way the league sees it. If they really like you, you've got two choices. You either extend or use the franchise tag after the final year. I don't make too much, covering this league 19 years, I don't make too much of this stuff. It becomes a real problem, though, once you come to training camp if these deals aren't done.
Yeah, we're talking with Adam Caplan. And real quick, by the way, Denzel Ward, 5 years, $100 million. That kind of throws the cornerback contract out of whack, no?
Yeah, I mean, it does to a certain extent. It's better than any of the deals that were done
in
free agency for corner. It's the first 3 years cash. It's the fully guaranteed money at signing.
$71 million guaranteed.
Yeah, but the real guarantees is where it's at. I've told you forever on your show. You got to know how much money is actually fully guaranteed at signing which means how much is he guaranteed to get no matter what if they would wind up cutting him. That's what the real money is. My understanding is the full guarantee at signing is actually very good. So. Yeah, look, the cornerback money, and by the way, that's a position the Eagles will be addressing pretty early in the draft.
All right. Speaking of the draft, we got the list of players who will be at the draft, and people try to read into this stuff, but 21 are there. Others were invited. They declined some. Why are some there, others not? Why decline?
Yeah, so talking to the league for over the years, what they do is, because you remember the Aaron Rodgers situation, who thought he might be the first pick overall, and, he dropped to 25 to the Packers. And for the Packers' sake, boy, that they lucked out, obviously, over Alex Smith. But when you really look at this situation, what the league does is they want players that have a very good chance to be drafted in the first round and hear their name called on the first day. And all these, there are 21 players. If you notice the list of the 21, it's a mixture of quarterbacks. Matt Corral, who will be a top 40 pick. He definitely has a chance to go in the first round. He's pretty talented. Then you've got Malik Willis. We know is going to go in the first round. Now, I did not see why Kenny Pickett's not going. I'm not aware of why he's not going, but he obviously should be there, if not in Las Vegas, by the way. I will be out there for three days for my friends at Sports Grid, but I'd like to know why Kenny Pickett's not out there. But if you look at the list, Kyle Hamilton will be a top 10 pick. Sauce Gardner could be top 5. The offensive linemen, the tackles, Charles Cross is one of them, Mississippi State. Ike Iguano from NC State should be a top 10 pick. Then the guys in the middle of the first round. Germaine Johnson is a Florida State DN who I really like, was great at the Senior Bowl. Some of the top linebackers who are out there. And by the way, Garrett Wilson, who I believe will be the top receiver off the board out of Ohio State, who is the most polished receiver for this draft. So that's why these guys go. And Jamison Williams, by the way, who's coming back from the torn ACL. It's interesting that he was invited.
Interesting too, because this group of first rounds could be so interesting because of all of the first round picks that have been traded the last couple of years. I think you said it on Friday. 8 teams have 2 picks. That means 8 teams have no picks. Should make a very interesting next Thursday night.
Yeah, actually, I had a GM here. We're 10 days away from the draft, first round. I had a GM tell me he thinks there's going to be a lot of trades. He goes, what happens is these GMs who don't have first round picks now, who are picking the second round, will get itchy. And of course, it depends if a player drops. I remember when the Ravens made the trade with the Eagles. Remember in 2018, the Ravens wanted to trade back up, and they did, to get Lamar Jackson, and the Eagles wanted to trade out, so it just happened, and they were able to get Dallas Goedert, so it worked out for them. Yeah, so if you look at the trades, Mike, if you look at the teams that don't have a first-round pick, Bears, the Bears, obviously, with the trade last year, and by the way, the Eagles were involved in talks with them, with the Bears, and they declined to do it. They wound up trading with the Giants. The Broncos, as you know, they traded for Russell Wilson, so they gave up their first-round pick. The Browns, who had an incredible amount of draft compensation a couple years ago after a series of trades from former general managers, well, they gave up just about everything to trade for Deshaun Watson. The Colts for the Carson Wentz trade. The Dolphins with the Tyreek Hill trade. And remember, they made the trade with the Eagles last year so they could get Jalen Waddle. So they're another team, Mike. All the compensation they had gotten for so-called tanking, which they never really were doing, but they were trying to rebuild. The Raiders for the trade for Devontae Adams. The Niners in the major trade last year to get Trey Lance. And they're still trying to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. And the Rams, of course, which turned out to be a great trade for the trade for Matthew Stafford, and they were not winning a Super Bowl without him. those are the 8 teams that don't have it. And then the teams that have multiple firsts, the Lions, 2-32, the Texans, who we mentioned, they made the big trade for Watson, giving up Watson. Giants, in last year's trade, the Jets, for the Jamal Adams trade, the Eagles, we know about that. They went from 3 picks in the first round to 15 and 18. The Saints, they made the trade with the Eagles. They have 16 and 19. The Packers, for the Adams trade, they have 22 and 28. And the surprising trade of Tyreek Hill, the Chiefs now have 29 and 30. And you have to ask yourself, who could the Chiefs possibly get to replace Tyreek Hill? It's a great draft, but there's absolutely no one in this draft, no matter how good it is, a receiver to replace Tyreek Hill.
No, now Andy Reid said that the offense won't be significantly different without Hill, right? I mean, hard to believe.
It will be different. And Andy does this, I get it. Coaches downplay anytime they trade a significant piece. They want to downplay any changes. I get it. But you know what, Mike Kafka, who's now the OC and I'm told the play caller for the Giants, he designed their passing game. Matt Nagy now will help. He's back there with Andy. But it's going to change. I don't care what anyone says. It absolutely will change because you don't have anyone like Tyreek Hill.
Well, and, I guess they've had these guys over the years we haven't seen a whole heck of a lot, like Mecole Hardman, these guys who play in little spurts. Then they get Valdez-Scantling, too.
They did.
Yeah. So,
they did, yeah.
But the Hardman, it feels like anytime he's gotten a chance to play extended time, he's done some. So who knows? Maybe I don't know, Andy does a good job of scheming these guys. Is it real the scheme or the player?
He does, you're right, but it's a combination of the incredible job that Andy does with his vision of what it looked like. And Mike Kafka, I'm telling you, Mike had a big deal. He was heavily involved in their pass game design. He was really their passing game coordinator and not only their quarterback's coach. Nagy will have to help out in that area, but Mike is brilliant. You might remember him as an Eagles quarterback. I'm told he will call the plays with the Giants. But getting back, MVS, Valdez-Scantling got a pretty good deal, making about $10 million a year. He runs well for his size, but you got to understand, the most dangerous and toughest receiver to cover the National Football League is Tyreek Hill, bar none.
Let's look at the Eagles, who have the 10 picks now, right? People ask me, how many picks do they have? Because they had 3 in the first round, it got lost in the sauce. Did they now have 10 picks in this draft, and 5 of them are in the first 3 rounds? So the impact of them and all the trades that have happened, they got a lot of moving parts from other places. Yeah,
so we're going to touch more on this, Mike, next week on Inside the Birds, but my early guess, because you couldn't use, it's not like anyone's telling us. If I had to guess with 15 overall and 18 overall, if they don't trade, it would be cornerback and wide receiver. It partially of who might be there. We'll give you the names next week on our show of who we think it might be at 15 or 18 at the corners. It's funny. I had one GM disagree with some people. I know some teams think it's a real first round of 12 to 15 picks. I had a GM tell me 15 to 18. He thinks because of the receiver group is so strong this year. Yes, it's not great overall. Garrett Wilson should be the first guy. He's really good. Should be somewhere between 8 and 12. He should go off the board. But it's real deep. It's deep in linemen. It's deep on defense. It's deep at corner, by the way. Now, other than Sauce Gardner, it's not elite. I've had personnel people tell me there's definitely a major difference between Stingley and Gardner. Although Stingley's his freshman season was probably better than any season Gardner's had, but unfortunately because of injuries, not play close to that level.
Yeah, he's coming off Liz Frank too.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a pretty good first round. It's not 32 deep. It never has been, never will be. It's impossible to have that. That's what fans need to understand. That's why teams like to trade down, not up, in the first round.
Yeah, all right. Adam Caplan, Inside the Birds podcast. And you mentioned, you hit on this about 15, 18, about whether or not they're true first-round picks, about the depth in this draft. It seems that it's not a top-end, that top-end talent, because of the quarterbacks not being here. But from talking to a lot of people, it seems that there is a lot of depth in this draft. You might not have that true high-end talent, but there is depth into, you just might not get as high a quality player maybe in that 15, 18 spot as maybe in years past.
Right. The term is elite, okay? The elite players in this draft. Ahmad Gardner, I had a GM tell me that he thinks he's the best player for this draft. I can't disagree with him. I've been talking about him since November. He's really the first player that we talked about for this draft before last season ended. It was the first player I really heard about from a lot of personnel people, and it's pretty much held up. He is a terrific football player. Aiden Hutchinson is really good. Is he elite? That's debatable. Thibodeau is definitely not elite based on personal people I spoke with through his tape study. But there are a lot of really good players. Linderbaum, who's going to be a guard out of Iowa. Ike Iguano is really good from NC State as a guard tackle. Hamilton is really very good, but not elite. Elite means that you really have no weaknesses. It's hard to find those players, Mike. It just, you don't usually have more than 4 or 5 per draft. Stingley, who we just mentioned, is very good, but the problem is you look at his injury history. I'll tell you what, though, if Jamison Williams did not tear his ACL, you might call him elite. He's really special, but the problem is he's going to have a lower medical grade because he's coming off the injury.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. I know you probably Joe Banner's 33rd team. They did their mock draft. They have Jamison Williams going to Philadelphia.
Is that right?
Yes,
I
they
don't
do.
even notice that. It's
and,
funny. Wow.
I felt I see wide receiver going a lot in mock drafts, and mock drafts are what they are, but wide receiver seems to be a very popular position for them at one of those 2 picks, but that's one of the few times I've seen him make it there. Normally he goes higher than 15. Yeah,
I think they had, if I'm not mistaken, I think they might have had him in for a visit for medical. Oh, George Pickens, by the way. He's going to go in the first round out of Georgia, who's absolutely phenomenally talented. He had the ACL injury from 2020 in November. Eagles had him in last week with Sauce Gardner, by the way. My understanding is his knees checked out pretty well, so he could go in the middle of the first round, and I would not rule out him going to the Eagles at 15 or 18.
Real quick, Jordan Davis met with the Eagles today, by the way, as well. So that's another name that is part of their 30 pre-draft visits, and he would be an interesting prospect to get at 15 or 18. Doubtful, though.
Well, I'll say this, the sleeper pick, when you say, well, give me some positions that they could take at 15 or 18 that would surprise you. Well, obviously, we've talked about this inside the Birds for months now because of the Fletcher Cox situation. And the Eagles, I don't think Milton Williams is a starter. I think he's a really good third, rotational D tackle. And they just don't have the great depth at D tackle. It wouldn't surprise anyone who follows this at all if they drafted a D tackle. But it's Jordan Davis. You have to figure out, as Greg Cosell told us on our show with him, the guy only plays 20 snaps a game. But why does he play 20 snaps? Listen to our show Monday. We'll have that for you. This next Monday, we're going to give you exactly what personnel people have told us. We've got some really good stuff on him. His tape is very interesting, but you have to be concerned when a guy only plays 20 snaps. There's always a reason for it.
All right, we'll be looking for that. Adam, a couple of days this week. Jeff has the week off. He's taking some vacation time. Andrew's here tomorrow. Adam's back on Wednesday as we get ready for the draft, and it always seems that something's going on in this league. We love it. Football at 4 in the books for this Monday. Adam, take care, pal.
Thank you.
All right, that's Adam Caplan from InsideTheBirds.com. Oh, boy.